Hey, welcome to your day off. My name is Corey, and of course, I'm sitting with my best bud, Tony. What's up, man?
What's going on, buddy?
Once again, we have to thank Premier Philadelphia for bringing us out this weekend. We've had a really ridiculously crazily good weekend, right?
Yeah, awesome, man, and Salon Centric for allowing us to do the podcast in the Salon Centric VIP room.
I know.
They've been really kind to us.
They've been
years
incredible.
in a row.
2 years in a row. They even let us get a cup of coffee if we want one. So that's really cool of them and nice of them as well.
And a lot of times it's kind of quiet in here except for us.
We're the ones making all the noise.
Yeah. So we appreciate them being just having a good attitude toward everything.
It's amazing. So our guest today is actually an artist that works with one of our new friends. I just like to say that, right? But works for his company, and it's definitely a face that if you've done the hair show circuit, you've seen him on the floor and seen him at the booth.
Yeah, I mean he's an educational director for Samvia. I've been watching him for so long. I mean, it's funny because when I first met him in person, I felt like I kind of knew him. You know what I mean?
Right?
But it's like it was kind of weird because it's the first time I'm really meeting you. But I've watched you so much that I feel like I know you.
I know, right?
You know what I mean?
It's actually kind of a weird world that we live in now anyways, right? Like when you meet people like that you've met on social media, that you've talked to on social media, like immediately, like I make the joke, like we're automatically past like handshakes, right? We immediately are into like hugs. Oh man, hey man, it's really nice to meet you. You know, like in any other time in the world, I think, meeting someone with a hug could be a little
Yeah,
odd,
that was
right?
my perspective. Andrew's, his perspective was like, who is this guy?
True story. So you let the cat out of the bag a little bit. Today our guest is Andrew Carruthers, and like you said, he's a director for Samvia. Our friend Samvia and Samvia's product line. So should we get in?
Yeah, introduce.
So Mr. Andrew Carruthers, welcome to your day off.
Why, thank you.
I think we all put on our radio voice, right? I think that's just Andrew's voice, though, right?
Yeah, right.
Some days. If it's working correctly.
Right.
Which doesn't always happen, honestly.
Yeah, I know, right?
Dude, man, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I was really stoked to do this. I have heard, a couple of the podcasts now, and I really enjoy what you guys do. I like how personal it becomes, and it feels fresh to me. And especially after I heard Sammy's, I was like, oh man, I want to be on there.
and here we are.
Yes.
But I was being serious about, I felt like I knew you because, I watch all your educational videos. And,
That's cool.
And it's pretty cool to actually get to meet you. And it was same thing with Sam. When I first met Sam, I was like, you kind of, you've watched you guys so many times that it does feel like we know you, but
yeah,
we appreciate the love.
I love that too. As I'm upstairs working at the booth, a lot of times people come over and they're like, "Oh my gosh, hey Andrew!"
Right.
And my initial reaction is like, "Hey, you!"
right.
Because in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, they kind of look a little familiar maybe, and I should maybe know this person, but I have no idea who they are.
Right.
And then they like give me a big hug or something, and they're like, oh my gosh, I watch all your videos. And then they kind of step back and they go, I just realized that I'm treating you like someone I've known forever, and you have no idea who I am. I'm sorry, I'm blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
But I love it. I think it's the coolest thing ever. And it honestly, it's what the big payoff for all the time and energy and even financial investment that we put into this stuff. That's the payoff, when someone comes up and does that. And it is so cool that social media and podcasts and YouTube and all that stuff has made it so that, like, I kind of feel like I kind of knew you guys coming into this because I've heard your voices and I kind of heard your personalities. And what a brilliant part of the digital world that brings in.
It's pretty crazy. It's like, and it's not about the hugs, it's not about the handshakes, but it's really nice when you know that you've impacted somebody's life even in the smallest way, right? For them to even recognize like what you've done, that means that you've had some kind of impact. And like you said, I mean, that's the payoff. I know for Tony and I that's the payoff. Like, oh, okay, so they're really hearing us, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure
know?
you guys get it all the time. People coming up to you and like, oh my gosh, your podcast, like, it inspires me and I get so much from it. And it does. It feels great.
A lot of times they'll close their eyes with, all right, go talk. Let's make sure it's you, right?
Exactly.
And judge you by your voice, right?
It's so funny. I love it. I love that too. And they're like, oh my God, that voice. I can't believe that voice. I'm hearing that voice, not like in their headphones or not like in their car.
But that's this weekend, what's been amazing, when he said the response that you get from people watching your videos and how that makes you feel. Everybody we've interviewed so far this weekend, they don't. A lot of people don't realize how much effort and love and resources go into creating a lot of this content, and so when someone does approach you and they really truly appreciate it and you have impacted their lives, not that it's gratifying, but it's that's why a lot of people do what they do. You know what I mean? It is to help others, and it's beautiful. You know what I mean? It's not really necessarily a selfish reason. It's really to try to lift others up.
Sure. I thought you guys were doing it because you're like making hundreds of thousands of dollars per podcast.
No, I'm spending hundreds of thousands.
That's more accurate.
Yeah, my wife's like, huh?
Yeah. What's this Rode mixing console on the credit card for?
Exactly.
You guys really need that? Can't you just use your iPhone?
Exactly.
Completely. That's awesome.
So Andrew, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up not far from here. I grew up in a town called York, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
So real close to here, about an hour and a half away.
Aren't they known for their dumbbells?
Yes, York dumbbell, York air conditioners. York's a crazy town because it's a really typical story of kind of the East and Midwest right now, which is tons of industry, lots of manufacturing. And then as things move overseas, the town starts to shut down, crime comes in, things get rough. So York is a tiny little town that's got big problems. It was getting pretty rough around the edges. I saw a guy got shot like out of my sister's window one night.
Wow.
It got tough. And so that was part of my motivation to leave and to move to Utah. And actually, I just told this story to a lady that earlier today. Just everything in my life had seemed to start to come to this point of, okay, this is the end of this chapter. The girl that I dated all through high school, we broke up. And then the job that I had, well, that went away. I went to college for a season, or a season. What am I playing, basketball? But I went for a semester and a half, and about halfway through the second semester, I realized that I don't get to just study the stuff I want to study. Like, I was obsessed with philosophy and theology, and so all I wanted to take was philosophy and theology. And of course, the guidance counselor is like, well, no, you have to take this math class. Oh, you have to take this science class. And I'm like,
where's the theology in that?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, this isn't working either. So it just kind of came to this point of staying here isn't going to get me to where I need to go. And so my sister had moved to Salt Lake City about a year and a half before that. And after visiting there a couple times, I had made some friends out there. So it was as far away as I could get from home and still have friends. Because I'm a total mama's boy. I love my mom, and we have a freaking amazing relationship. And I lived in her house at the time, and I knew that if I just like moved to Philly or moved to Baltimore or something where I could get in the car and run home to mom, I would have.
You would have. Right?
Yeah, like, shit would have got hard, and I would have needed my, like my laundry done or something. Like, I don't have enough coins for the laundromat, Mom. I'm coming home.
Oh, no. Bring him underwear.
Yeah. So I knew I had to pack up my Volkswagen Scirocco to the gills and get far away enough that it was going to cost me money to get home, right?
Right.
And Salt Lake was the place, but I had no savings. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had a couple friends, and so I packed up the car, headed to Salt Lake City. Best thing I've ever done, because I am who I am and what I do because of that move.
Right.
And then 3.5 years ago, my wife and I fell in love with this area in Southern Oregon. It's called Talent. It's right between two towns called Medford and Ashland. Those are kind of the bigger to
those are
do
those are the big ones.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like talent, I think we have like 30 or 40,000 people total.
Right.
Like maybe not even that many. I'm probably exaggerating, honestly. It's
I'm sure
probably
you can
smaller
count
than
next
that.
time you're there.
Yeah. 1,
2, 3, 4.
okay, there's 4 people in talent. But we love it. We live on 7 acres of land up on this corner of this hillside, so we have like a 270-degree view of the valley, and we back up to just forest. It's incredible. Like something we could have never had in Utah. I mean, we would have had to live in the middle of nowhere, Utah, to find that. And I have an airport that's a 15-minute drive away. It's an itty-bitty airport. It's a commuter, like we just finally got real jets coming in, which is awesome. That's kind of a nice bonus. But yeah, it's just killer. I'm living the country life now.
Kind of dig that, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to see it, but you have to post a picture when we release the podcast.
Okay,
of your view of the valley.
Yeah, definitely. I'll send you one.
That's cool. So how'd you find hairdressing, and when did that intersect in your life?
My sister was a hairdresser, and she, like, I never had this thought of, oh my gosh, I really want to be a hairdresser. Mm-hmm. Really what it was is I would see her go to work. She would hang out with what seemed like friends of hers, and then they would hand her money. Like, okay, that looks like a cool job.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I was working in the music industry. I was actually apprenticing at a recording studio. It was really cool because Bruce, the guy that owned the studio, he would let me take late nights and weekends to record my own band. So I was recording like straight edge hardcore bands on the weekends at this studio. And I also worked for a live sound company called Mammoth Sound. And oh my gosh, the first job I ever did for these guys, it was a rave. And I had no idea. I really, I'd heard the word rave. I knew that, like, hippies danced to jungle music or whatever, but, like, I didn't really understand what a rave was. And so I'm like, okay, where is it, Mark? And he's like, I don't know. They won't tell us where it's at until about 2 hours beforehand.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting at our shop. I have this, van full of, $50,000 worth of sound equipment. And we get this message, and it's a hand-drawn map that takes you out into the salt flats of Utah. And I'm like, really? I'm doing this, huh? He's like, oh yeah, it's all you. So
you're the young one.
Oh yeah. I'm like driving out through the middle of nowhere salt flats with, like I said, like a ton of really nice sound equipment in the van, just like falling over in the back of the van. And I just get to this place, and there's just a guy standing out in the freaking desert. And I'm like, is that the guy? Yeah. And he had, probably 20 massive generators lined up. So we set up the sound system. This is, by the way, this is like 10:30 at night. And I'm just setting up the sound system at 10:30 at night. And I'm like, where is everyone? And he's like, well, no one shows up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. So we get the sound system all set up, and he, starts the first DJ at, I think, like midnight or so. And I'm like, okay, so the DJ's just playing music, right? I'm done.
Right.
And so I go in the van and just like go to sleep, and then I wake up at 6:30 in the morning. He's knocking on the window of the van. He's like, okay, we're done. And so 6:30, I pack up the van and drive home.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
He's like an Uber for audio equipment.
It was really funny, but yeah, I loved the music industry, but I also realized that example was exactly what my life was going to be if I worked in the music industry. Because even working in the recording studio, of course, you get paid by the day. And so the band wants to get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they don't want to go home till 7 o'clock in the morning because they're paying by the day. And I just knew that, like, I have such a passion for music that it was going to destroy music for me, actually. Because I was starting, even after like 6 months of doing this, I was already, I would get in the car and I'd turn my radio off. Usually I'd get in my car and like put on my favorite CD and rock out to it, right? And so this is leading back to my sister, Tyra. Like I said, I would see that she seemed to have a good time with her clients. She made good money. She seemed to have a pretty flexible job too. Like if she wanted to go on vacation, she just marked out her books and went on vacation. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe this is a better option. Maybe this is something I could do. It's still kind of artistic. I can make a living, still be in my band, and go tour with the band. And I was able to apprentice. In Utah, you can apprentice instead of going to hair school. So I found these two guys that had the really cool salon in Salt Lake and started apprenticing for them. And the first day that I worked there, Tyson was like, okay, you're going to learn how to shampoo hair. And I was kind of like, wait, I thought I was here to learn to be a hairdresser. And he's like, yeah, the shampoo is like the most important part, dude. Like, we're going to spend 2 weeks on shampooing hair. I was like, okay. And I went home and I'm like, is this really what I want to do?
Right.
But the next day, Tyson and David were kind of the cool hip hairdressers in town. And so they had all like the models and stuff.
Sure.
And so this gorgeous girl walks through the front door, sits back, I shampoo her hair, and she's like, like having the best time. And then she tipped me, and I was like, cool. All right, this job rules, actually. I am totally fine with this. But what was really awesome about that opportunity is Tyson was one of the regional, I think his title was like regional artistic or regional education director for TG and Tony and Guy. And so it was a really immediate connection to what the potential in our industry was. And we went to the TG world release, I think within maybe 3 or 4 months of me working there. And walking into that thing and seeing basically a 3-day rock concert on steroids for hairdressers, I was like,
I'm in.
Cool. This is amazing. Like, what an incredible industry. And so I was hooked pretty fast.
When you walked into that show, did you see yourself on the stage? I mean, with your rock and roll history and stuff?
I really did. Yeah.
Or your music history,
Especially when I saw, I specifically remember seeing James Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
That was the guy that when I first saw him on stage, I was like, I want to be that dude. Because he was so classy and like well-spoken, but he still had this like kind of cool rock and roll edge to him. And I'm like, dude, that's the guy I want to be. And yeah, it was super inspiring. But yes, to your question, I knew that's what I wanted.
Just tasted it and felt it. That was it. That's pretty cool, man.
So what instrument did you play?
I've always been a bass player in the bands that I play in. I have guitars and drums and stuff at the house that I like to. Well, I don't have drums. I actually have a cajon that I built. Do you know what a cajon is?
No.
It's this really cool. You can get plans on the internet and actually build one yourself. But it's this really rad. It basically looks like a square stool, and you sit on it.
Oh yeah,
and you
I've
build
seen
out
those.
the upper
Yeah.
portion of it as a snare drum, and then the lower portion is your kick drum. And so you actually put snares in at the top where it's kind of tighter, the wood's tighter, and then at the bottom when you hit it, it's like super deep and resonant. So you just kind of like sit back on the drums and just play it. It's so fun.
That is awesome.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of like
Look at
to mess around with anything, honestly. I just bought myself, a couple of years ago, I bought a steel guitar.
Oh.
Dude, that's my jam.
That's your jam.
Yeah, like have a couple whiskeys on the couch and sit back and just, just like play some
so
blues.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, it's so
That is-
sweet.
Love the blues.
Yeah, me too.
I heard there's a little rumor that you enjoy riding as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'm ashamed.
Motorcycles or horses?
Motorcycles. Yeah. I'm ashamed to say it. I actually haven't had a bike for the last year. My wife, she still has her bike.
Does she tease you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she'll let me borrow it once in a while, but she reminds me that it's her bike. But yeah, I've toured quite a bit. I've got 3 friends, Dan, Brandon, and Vic, back in Salt Lake City that we've done a ton of touring together. We actually did the ride from Salt Lake all the way to Fairbanks, Alaska, and back.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, it was took us 21 days. We rode 9,000 and some odd miles in 21 days. It was
On a motorcycle.
incredible. It was intense, man. It was like some of the best moments of my life and some of the honestly like most scary, I think I'm just on the edge of dying right now moments too.
Right.
We were in Fairbanks and we were going to go down to Anchorage. And to go through there, you go through Denali State Park, and we were super stoked because Denali is incredible. But we got to Denali, and just the sky turned just jet black, like no light at all, and just this storm opened up that I've never quite experienced rain and wind on that level, much less on a motorcycle.
Right.
But Denali, the Denali highway that goes through there is a skinny 2-lane road with very little edge on the sides of it. So once you're moving, it's like there's not really a place to pull off here.
Right.
So you just kind of keep cranking. So we were, just totally white knuckle and sideways for about an hour and a half. Finally, we got to this little gas station, pulled off, and there was probably 50 motorcycles in there, and all of them were inside the gas station. And the guy that owned the gas station was so nice. He was like giving everyone coffee and stuff, and everyone's like taking off their rain gear and laying it on the heaters to try and dry out and stuff. And so finally, a couple people that we had talked to coming up from Anchorage, they're like, it's like this the whole way to Anchorage. So we abandoned the idea to go to Anchorage. And so we turned back around, and we start heading back towards Fairbanks, where the sky is clear. Right. I just did quotation marks, just so you know. And so we start heading north again, come out of Denali, and it's like the skies open up, and it's blue skies, and everything's great. So I pull over, take my rain gear off, and about 20 minutes later, we round this corner, and all of a sudden the sky's black again, like the direction of Fairbanks. So we pull off to put our rain gear back on, and we had pulled off just in this tiny little town. There was like 5 buildings, and there's this one just huge awning. It almost looked like something you would park like a huge RV underneath or something.
Right.
So we pull under there, start putting our rain gear back on, and hail starts coming down the size of golf balls, just like,
Oh my God.
oh, just crazy.
Oh my
Luckily,
gosh.
we were underneath this awning, because if we were on the bikes, that would have hurt so bad. Like rain hurts at 55 miles per hour. So,
Right, I can't imagine, right?
Hail, I don't even
Golf
know what would
balls,
have happened.
Right.
So, do you guys mind if I tell the story?
No, please, go ahead.
So,
We're in.
this was my favorite of the whole trip. And so we're in this place, and, it's just, again, like the sky opens up on us and just like dumps, and just, we're like, oh my gosh, man. So there was a tiny little restaurant there called this Clear Skies Lodge. We go into the Clear Skies Lodge, and we are watching the TV. He has the weather on, and you can see that it's just getting worse towards Fairbanks.
Wow.
And we're just like, okay, well, we'll just sit it out and hope that things change. And so we sit and have a beer or two, have a little food, and it's just not changing, man. It's just getting worse and worse. And so we're talking to the owner of the Clear Skies Lodge, and we're like, what do we...
Is there clear skies? I mean, just...
Yeah.
It seems so...
Ironic, yes?
Ironic, right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking for the clear sky at the clear sky.
Yeah. Hello.
So the owner?
So the owner's like, we're like, is there a place to stay? And he's like, not really. He's like, honestly, if you guys want, if you got, tents and stuff, he's like, you could even, just throw your sleeping bags on the back room floor if you want. And we were like, yeah, cool. And then he kind of grins and he goes, or you could stay with the Rochesters. And we're like, okay, well, first off, why'd you just laugh?
Right, yeah.
He's like, well, no, don't get me wrong. The Rochesters are nice enough people, but it's a little like staying with the Addams family.
What?
And we're like, okay, now we have to go stay with the Rochesters. Like, we have to go see this.
How many of you guys are there?
4 of us.
All right.
Yeah. And so he calls across the street, and he checks, and he's like, yep, Rochesters have a room. You guys can head over there. So we ride. It's just literally right across the street. So we ride across the street, and then we went around to the back of the house, and we had this thing where we just had a deal where we would rotate, like one person would pay for the room each night. So it was not like we're trying to split it up 4 ways.
Right.
So it was Dan's turn. So Dan and Vic get off their bikes and they go in the back door. And Brandon and I just stayed out because we're like, well, we're already soaking wet. Might as well just sit in the rain and wait for them, and then we'll go park. 5 minutes goes by. 10 minutes goes by. And we're like looking at each other. Okay, we need to go in and see what the hell's going on. So we walk in the back door, and you enter into the kitchen, and there's one light on over top of the stove, and it's kind of on the opposite end of the room. And Dan and Vic are talking to Vixie Rochester was his name.
Vixie?
Vixie with a V, like Victor. So Vixie Rochester and Dan and Vic are over standing by the stove talking. And I look to the left, and there's a living room. And the living room's pretty dark as well. There's one little lamp on in the corner, and there's this guy that looks like he's about 150 years old, sitting in a chair, like a lounge chair, head to toe in camouflage, playing one of those little video poker machines. And then next to him is this other lady with like this big blonde, boofy hair, and she's sitting on the couch petting this German Shepherd. And then I look at the wall, and there is taxidermy covering every square inch of one of the walls. And then I look at the coffee table, and there's a little kitty on the coffee table on its back playing with a ball of yarn, taxidermied. Then I look back at the couch, and I realize that the German Shepherd that this woman is petting is taxidermied in its favorite position on the couch. Like, it even had a leg kind of hanging over the side of the couch. I mean, he had taxidermied this dog into its favorite position. And so Brandon and I are looking at each other like, okay, now I'm actually getting a little creeped out.
Oh, they were brave 10 minutes ago, weren't they?
Yeah. And so we walk over to Dan and Vic, and we're like, are we getting a room? And they were just kind of wrapping things up. And so Vixie's like, all right, you guys are in building B. And he points out the window, and there's like this 2-story tough shed out back, like literally a tough shed. And he's like, you guys can just go inside and go up to the top, and you can pick any room up there. There's a couple that are open. And we're like, okay, then do we like come back and get the keys? And he lets out this like, he's like, keys? We ain't got no keys around here. Keys get lost. So we pull our bikes around to building B, park in the mud. We open the door to building B, and we go in, and the first door in front of us is kind of partially open, and I kind of like push the door open, and there's a bed in there, and I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. There was a TV on it, and all that was on was static, and it was like turned up so loud. So it was just a TV in an empty room.
Poltergeist.
Oh my gosh. And all of us were just like, this is honestly getting really creepy. So we go upstairs, find a room, and we actually took one of the beds and like pushed it against the door and all slept with our knives underneath our pillows. We were up at like the crack of dawn, which at this point it's June in Alaska. You know, sun came up at like 3:30. We were on our bikes.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see you made it. I'm glad to see that you're not taxidermied at the Rochester.
Right, you look at the wall and like, oh, there's Andrew. There's
Actually, you know
Brian,
what?
Right?
Yeah.
He never said if the guy that was 150 years old was actually alive, or was he just 150 years old?
He might have been, honestly. We did actually talk to a guy on the ferry a couple of days later that had stayed there as well. He's like, oh, did you guys see the trophy room? We're like, oh, you mean the living room where like the dog and the cat were taxidermy? He's like, no, that house is an old church. The actual congregation room is the taxidermy room. There's like bison and there's a brown bear, and he's like, I had to sleep on a cot in the trophy room.
Oh no. Holy cow,
You ain't
man.
gonna- That's scary.
What if I get
Yeah.
a room on there on like hotels.com?
Right, yeah.
.com.
We don't have hotels. They get lost.
Yeah.
What a great
That-
story.
I know, that's crazy.
Yeah, sorry to depart a little from the
No,
hair
it's okay.
topic, but it's just one of my favorite stories. It's
Dude,
such good
that's
memories.
awesome.
That's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Now I want to
go to the Rochesters.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go to Rochester's. I want to go to Anchorage or Fairbanks on a
On a
motorcycle.
motorcycle, that'd
Yeah.
be pretty rad, wouldn't it?
It's an incredible ride. It's a hard ride for sure, because there's, you get to a point where there's very little in between towns. You start to get even I had a pretty big touring bike with a 5.5 gallon tank on it. And even for me, there was times where I was getting pretty nervous that we weren't going to get to the next town and get gas. So I think it's even different now, because this was back in 2006 or 7, I think, that we did that. But Yeah, it was incredible though. If you could ever do it, I would highly suggest it actually.
Yeah, my wife won't let me.
Yeah.
His wife won't let me either.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So how'd you kind of find your love for like education, or actually, I mean, did you work in a salon and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked at the first salon that I worked at was Tyson's Salon. It's a salon called Studio Salon. I worked there for a little over 3 years, but during that 3 years, I had met Sean Trujillo and Angie Katzanevis, who own and founded Lunatic Fringe Salons. And they had just opened their own salon.
In Salt Lake?
Yeah, in Salt Lake City. Just real recently, they had opened the first Lunatic Fringe. And I've only had this experience with, maybe about 4 or 5 people in my life. But, you just, when you meet someone and you just instantly know that, yeah, I'm supposed to hang out with these people. Like, they're good people. And
That's what I felt like when I met Tony.
Yeah.
Like, that's my dude forever.
Your mom didn't think so, though.
No, she didn't like you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
She did. No.
You're a bad
She
influence.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story, Andrew.
Yeah.
We'll get that one over beer someday.
Yeah.
She thought that was that he was a Rochester.
Yeah. As soon as I met Sean and Angie, I kind of knew, and things were kind of a little rocky with Tyson and I, and he'll maybe hear this podcast and he would agree. We're good friends now, and we've made our amends, but we were having a tough time back then. He wasn't. I don't think that Tyson's natural place was to be a manager of people, and so he had a hard time managing his frustrations with that, and I had a hard time. I was young and just kind of a punk ass kid, and so I had an attitude, of course, too. Like after 6 months of being an apprentice, I think I know what I'm doing, and
Right.
so I'm sure I wasn't easy to work with either. But
And I'm sure he'd say that too, right?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and. So going and working for Sean and Angie at Lunatic Fringe was a nice transition, and it was a nice fresh start. It's also what connected me with Paul Mitchell, the school. And so that was, I was working, the great thing too with working with Tyson is I had an opportunity to start being an educator before I even had a hair license. So while I was still apprenticing, I was going out and teaching product knowledge classes for TG. And I can still remember my very first product knowledge class, because in that moment, I knew that as scared as I was freaking out. I was so terrified at that class. But I knew in my heart, I was like, this is something I want to do. I have to be a teacher. And so got a little bit of that experience with Tyson. Then when I started to work with Sean and Angie, I tried to keep my relationship with TG, but because Tyson was that bridge with TG, that didn't last too long.
So,
With Paul Mitchell?
No, with TG at that point.
Okay.
but were you licensed yet when you went with
Yes. So
Lunatic Fringe?
so basically what I had to do is I kind of had to get my license so that I could leave Tyson's. That things got really awkward too, because I started to sort of put the gas on to get my license all taken care of, and I didn't quite tell him yet what the intent behind that was, and so it got kind of weird. But yeah, I got my license, went over and started working for Sean and Angie at Lunatic. And one of the guys that worked there, Dennis James, who became one of my biggest mentors in my life, he was helping to build up Paul Mitchell School. And he needed to build a team of educators to go out and start training these schools on the cutting system and how to be a presenter and a teacher and all those things. So
Paul Mitchell, the school, is that like a foundation school, or was that advanced techniques and stuff?
So it started as just a foundation school, and then our group, the Paul Mitchell Advanced Academy, we actually did start to offer advanced academies for professionals too.
Okay. And how long ago was that? How long ago did they launch their schools?
I want
Approximately?
to say that the first official Paul Mitchell School, which is kind of in Provo, Utah. I mean, well, that school opened it was called Von Curtis Academy, and when Clayball had opened that, I actually don't know when that opened, because it was quite a bit before my time with around them. But then they opened the Costa Mesa School, I want to say maybe around like 2002, 2003 seems about right. And that was kind of the first official Paul Mitchell, the school.
Got it.
But I mean, within the time that I started with him, which was around that like 2003 time until the time that I left, that was like 2007, 2008, it went from like 6 or 8 schools to like 100.
Right.
It was crazy.
So do you know the Risers?
Yeah.
That have the Temple School in Frederick?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually who we're working with next year with when we do our Presley Poe event there.
That's so cool. They're such awesome people.
Agreed. We couldn't agree
100%.
more. You know, they
100%.
Yeah, Sharon and well, I'll give the shout out to Sharon. I mean, she's been incredible with helping us with the podcast and helping us with those events there. And that's what I mean. We feel
Shout out to Charles too.
yeah. No, well, I mean, just Sharon's like our go-to, right?
Yeah.
Because if you go to Charles, he goes talk to Sharon.
Yeah.
Like any good husband would, right?
Yep.
Right.
That's pretty much how it's always been too.
By her. She says yes. Okay, you're good.
100.
You're smart, Charles.
Exactly. 100% on that.
So it's cool. So you knew you wanted to get into education early.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it was, like I said, it was immediate.
Did you know that your path to that rock star stage was going to be through education? Was that the motivator, or was there something else that grabbed you?
That's a good question, honestly. I think I'd be lying if I didn't admit that there was definitely some ego to that. You know, seeing the rock star up on stage and just kind of wanting to be a rock star. That was part of my goals as a human being, as a child, you know, as a musician, is
Sure.
I wanted to be on stage entertaining people.
I mean, you didn't pick up the guitar for any other reason, really. I mean, and not you, but one doesn't pick up a guitar and not kind of think that.
I think for the most part, yeah, if you're going to learn to play an instrument, you do it with the mindset that you're doing it to be in a band, to be on stage in front of people.
Right.
I think for the most part. So there was definitely a part of me that, yes, I was thinking like, yeah, I want to be up there as the rock star hairdresser.
Uh-huh.
And I did try to kind of get to that place through even photography, you know, doing photo shoots and things like that. So I would enter into the TG Photographic Awards and do those types of things. And I don't think that I quite understood at that point in my life that earning the right was going to be the path to that point. I don't think I realized that just doing product knowledge classes and teaching at hair schools and, you know, kind of working the quote unquote trenches a bit was going to be the path to being on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the first things that I talk to people about now when they ask me, how do I do what you do? Or how do I become Sam Villa? I was like, you go volunteer to hair school tomorrow. That's how you become Sam Villa. Because that's the first step.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just jump on stage. And in fact, I've even talked to some of the influencers that are getting that opportunity. They are skipping the step of, I taught in a hair school for 5 years. I did product knowledge classes for 10 years for Redken, and I finally got my shot to be on the artistic team. Like, they've been able to skip some of those steps. And I'll be really honest, there was a part of me when this first started to happen that it kind of hurt my soul a little bit to see that happen.
Sure.
And please, you know, if you're listening to this and you're one of those people that have those opportunities, know that I don't still harbor those feelings, but that was my gut reaction, because we always, and in some ways it was almost this source of pride, a weird source of pride, like, oh man, I went through the trenches, I dug through the trenches to get here. And I've lost a little bit of that attitude, because I realize that's not the path to success for everyone.
Right.
But I've talked to some of the people recently that have had those opportunities to skip those steps, and they've been very open with the fact that that's really scary. And so when I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, there is a pathway that doesn't involve paying those dues, but I think that that's very few, very far between.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, the people that do have those opportunities, the first time they get thrown on a big, huge stage in front of a couple thousand people, and they've not even taught a class in a hair school, imagine the brown spot in the pants.
It's sort of like life, right? I mean, really, you talked about life. You have some people who grew up in you know, an affluent home. You have some people grow up in a middle class, and you got some people who grow up in the hood or a bad neighborhood or the ghetto or whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all going to say point A, right? It's going to be easier for some to get there. It's going to be a little harder for others. But the guys who are at the bottom, when they get there, there's very few things that are going to shake them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So they're going to have a certain demeanor and calmness, or things that aren't going to necessarily spook them that was going to spook the other two. So that, to me, that's just life. So people like yourself who goes through the harder path to get to where you're going, you're just better prepared. You're just, you know what I mean? You have a certain calmness, a certain just something inside you that, you know what I mean, that you come across so confident, but it's so natural.
Right.
And you know what I mean? It's just, we appreciate it. You know what I mean? People can see that, they can relate to it, and just feel that from you. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah,
He's got like a tool bag filled with experience.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. You know what I mean? And so certain people can only reach and talk to some. You know what I mean? You can probably reach and talk to most because you've done all those things. You know what I mean?
And just even as you were talking, the thing that was kind of coming to me, and thank you for this, because I think I just had a realization about this. The reason that I think that I can do that, because you wouldn't have felt that way if you saw me teach in 2002. The reason that I'm able
That's
to...
when he had his brown spot.
Yes, quite a few of them. Mine were probably like green, honestly, at that point. Like, they were that bad. But the reason I can now stand in front of an audience, like even that salon-centric thing last night, it's only the second time I've ever done like a moderation for a panel. I don't do that. That's not what I do. But the reason I'm able to do that and to be able to stay present and be myself is because all of those years scrubbed off the other stuff, which is the fears of, oh my gosh, what's everyone in the crowd thinking? Wait, did I just stumble over my words? Oh crap, I just totally botched that beginning. What do I do now? Like all those things are experiences that I've had in a class. I've had to figure out how to deal with them, or I fell on my face and then I got coaching from my mentors, or I went back, and I still to this day, when I get on the plane tonight, I'll do my list of what worked and what didn't.
Get out, really?
Oh, absolutely, man.
And every weekend you do that because you're on the road a lot.
Absolutely. Like every class I look back, and our team has a debrief process. It's part of our culture at Samvia that we have an upload in the morning and we have a debrief at night. And everyone goes through and they say, okay, this is what worked today. What can we do tomorrow that makes it even greater? And that's just part of our culture, and it's part of one of the things that Sam has taught me is you're always in that process of looking at, okay, what worked and what didn't. And it doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to be bad, it's just how do you keep putting one foot in front of the other? And through that process, what I just realized from listening to you is I think that has scrubbed off all the edges in a way. And so when I do get to stand on a stage now, a lot of those things, like don't get me wrong, it still goes through my head. If I throw out a stupid joke and it doesn't land and I look out in the audience.
Oh, I do that all the time.
But it still kind of hurts a little bit, like when you look at an audience of 150 people with blank stares, like you got to real quick, like say, okay, shut up, ego, keep moving, but the more often that you do it, the easier it is to recover and can continue and just show your true self up there. True. And so that was a cool realization.
You just brought up Samvia. So before we got onto this, we were at Paul Mitchell. So how did you get from Paul Mitchell to Samvia?
So I worked with Paul Mitchell for, I believe it was like 5 or 6 years. And I was kind of hitting a place in my career that I think I was just in burnout. I was traveling too much, still trying to maintain a full-time clientele behind the chair. And when I say full-time, I'm talking like 55-hour kind of work weeks, 10-hour days, 4 days a week, and then plus an 8 or 9 hour day on a Saturday or something. Right. And then get on a plane on Saturday evening, show up somewhere, teach Sunday morning, get back on the plane Monday night, and get home and do clients the next day. Oh. And you can't do that for too long. You can do it for a little while, especially when you're in your 20s, and probably drink all night and do all that kind of crazy stuff too. So I hit burnout. I became a part owner in one of our salons, which was...
Because that's the way to cure burnout there, Andrew.
Right.
It's the way to do something, dude.
We
the way
tack
to-
on a salon onto this.
Well, it was so I resigned from Paul Mitchell, and then I bought into the salon because I was kind of thinking, okay, if I become a salon owner, I can back off on my days in the salon. I can switch the way that I'm working with my clients, and none of that worked. I was not a good salon owner. I think my employees would say differently of me, and I love them for it, but I don't think that I think I'm pretty good at covering up what's actually happening inside me. I feel like I'm pretty good at being a duck, where on top of the water, smooth sailing, and underneath the feet are going. You know? So I started to plan to make that transition again, where it was like, okay, I shouldn't be a salon owner. I had an awesome manager, Allie. Her and her husband had been wanting to be salon owners, so started to kind of talk to her about possibly buying the salon. And about a year before that, I had started to kind of put out the vibes that, like, I think I want to be a teacher again. I really miss teaching. I want a new opportunity for teaching. And my good friend Geneva Cowan, she lives in Anchorage, Alaska. She was also a Redken artist, and she was, a good kind of right hand to Sam at that point. And right at that point, Sam was starting to really explode as his own independent brand as well. She's like, hey, I really think you need to meet Sam because you guys have very similar values. I think you'll get along super well, and he needs someone specifically for his brand. And Sam, he was really smart about that because he was like, if I bring someone in from Redken, it's going to be an extension of Redken. If there's too much Redken brought into my own brand, not that he was trying to not have Redken as part of his brand, but it was like...
No, but you still have to be an individual. You still have to stand out on your own.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, he wanted to, have his own voice on his side. So she was like, hey, you came from a different place, so this might be a great opportunity for him. And they invited me out to a photo shoot they were doing in New York. And again, one of those moments of just... dude, yeah, I love you.
Yeah, right. We've all felt that, right?
Just this instant love for him, and from his report, he felt the same with me. Just really comfortable and solid. And within that weekend, we actually got snowed in that weekend. Everyone's flights got delayed, and mine actually got completely canceled. So Sam calls me up and he's like, hey, I'm at the bar across the street from the hotel. Come down and have a beer with me. So I go down, and he's like, all right, so how would you feel about coming and being on my stage in Chicago in a couple weeks? I was like, are you serious, man? He's like, yeah. He's like, I have a really good feeling. He's like, just let's call this a test run. Nothing serious. If you don't like it or I don't like it, no problem. We'll go our separate ways. But by the end of Chicago ABS, it was like, yes, like this is family.
This is it.
We're meant to be together. And so, yeah, that's how it happened.
So there's so much, like, listen, every single interaction I've had with Sam over the years, or I guess all of us can kind of say, I mean, Sam's just an incredible dude to be around. His presence is incredible. His respect for the industry is incredible. But has he ever had to have like that tough conversation with you, or what does a Sam via tough conversation sound or feel like?
Well, we actually haven't had a lot of that, to be honest with you. I can tell you what I've seen it look like.
Fair enough.
Has your parent ever said, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed to you?
Oh.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. I could kind of see that. Could you guys see that?
Oh, yeah, because you don't want to disappoint
No.
Mr. Sam V.
Like, I don't want to disappoint. I don't work for him.
Yeah.
Can I tell you the honest truth? And I think you'd be completely fine with me sharing this with you. There's been a few times that it's gone the other way. There's been a tough conversation from me to him. You know, and that's what I absolutely love about this man. He knows that he, too, needs coaching sometimes. And there's been, a situation or two where it's like he'll come to me and, he's always genuine and honest about it. He's like, how'd that go? And it's okay we've built a relationship where it's okay for me to say, you know what, Sam? Let's talk about that because that didn't go so well. And he's super open to it. He doesn't get defensive. His ego doesn't come up and start saying like, "Wow, I'm Sam Villa," and like, "Damn it, that's how things are gonna be." That doesn't happen. He's always like, "You know what? Thank you so much for being honest." And I think especially when you achieve the level that Sam has, there are very few people in your life that are willing to have those kind of conversations with you, even if you ask for it. Because I know he does. I know he asks other people to say, "Hey, will you be honest with me on this? How'd that go? Hey, will you be honest with me? Do you think this haircut looks good?" And we have a relationship where I can say, "I don't love it, Sammy. Let's work on it together." And I just like, I have so much more respect for that than someone like our freaking president that, just would, that personality will never apologize. That personality would never accept that they behaved out of line. They would never accept that there is maybe something they could learn from someone else. Sam is the kind of leadership that we need, not only within our industry and within our companies, but like, that's the kind of personality that would be such an incredible leader for our country. Someone that actually said, "You know what? I screwed up.
Right.
I didn't say this right, and I apologize for that." God, wouldn't that be cool?
I never thought sitting down with Andrew I'd fall more in love with Sam, but it certainly has happened.
Sam has my vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Sam Villa for president.
Sir President.
right.
We totally have to get shirts made up. Sam Villa for president. Yeah. We'd sell 1 billion of them, and then Sam would be like, "Where's my cut, bro?
Yeah.
Where's my cut?"
Maybe he'll be going on a presidential tour.
I know, right? That's cool. So, Andrew, what's on your billet here in the short term?
Well, for the rest of the day, just hanging out at the Sam Villa booth.
Forget about that.
But,
What's going on in your life, man? What's happening?
Well, another reason that I'll let you love Sam even more is he also is the kind of leader that isn't afraid to let people have space. And I'm so thankful for this that I kind of will get emotional because excuse me. Last year, I made a little bit of a mistake, and it wasn't a big mistake, but I took a job with Sam that was kind of more of a little bit more of like a quote corporate job. Like I became more of a part of the actual like upper management team. I'm the director of education, but that's I have my education team that I work with, which is 2 people, Jesse and Anna, which I love. And then I work with Sam pretty closely. But for the most part, I'm an artist for him. I'm an educator for him. And then I have kind of some leadership position. But last year, when we had a guy leave that was kind of my go-to person, and I went to Beth Carson, who is Beth Carson and Kurt Gerheim are Sam's business partners that help run the company. I went to Beth and I was like, what do you think about me taking on some of Dan's job? And she's like, "Well, let's talk about it. I love the idea." She was like, "I'm all for it, but I want you to understand what this looks like. Like, you will now have a clock in, clock out kind of job." I've kind of never had that, because even as a hairdresser, I still could say, "Hey, yeah, like I want to take this vacation. I want to do this. I want to do that." So she helped me to understand what the parameters were, and I said, "You know what? I want to do this. I want to try." It burned me up, man. Like, I'm not meant to sit in a room in front of a computer for 40 hours a week. That doesn't work for me. And what I just absolutely love about Sam, I love about Beth, I love about Kurt, and even Tom upstairs, our VP of sales, when I went to them and said, "I'm not happy." Like, I was literally starting to have physical repercussions from the level of stress I was taking on. When I went to them and said, "I need to be a teacher. Like, I need to be a teacher. I need to be a coach. I need to be a mentor. That's what makes me happy. That's how I'm valuable to you guys." They were like, "Cool, let's figure this out then." And so back when I did get kind of burned out on the hairdressing industry, one of the other things I did is I started training as a life coach. And so in 2010, I became a certified life coach. And then I've had clients on and off throughout the last almost 10 years now. And I stopped doing that as well because I was so busy with the job.
And just to clarify, your client, you've had life coaching clients.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yeah, life coaching clients. Thank you. And so part of me kind of stepping back away from the job that I had taken last year was also me saying to them, I would like to get back into my life coaching practice too. And even this summer I went to them and I was like, you know what? I'm actually thinking I really want to get back into my life coaching practice. I don't want to step away from what I'm doing with you guys. So let's set up super realistic expectations. And they were super fine with like, hey, as long as these deliverables are met, your agreements are met with us each month, we have your back. In fact, we don't just have your back, talk about it on our platforms. Because that was one of the things I was a little scared about. Like, you know, the reason that I have this platform with you guys right now to do this podcast is because of Sam Villa. Right. It's not because, I mean, not that I don't play a part, you know, of course.
Yeah.
But the reason that I had the path to this platform is because of Sam Villa. So I wanted to be really respectful of that. So I went to him and I said, well, I don't want to, you know, have things cross over and make you guys feel like, hey, he's using this platform that we've built for him to now kind of advertise himself as this coach. And they were like, are you kidding? Yes. Use your relationships that you've built with us. Like, what a better way to spread the word that you're a coach and that you have these abilities. They're like, we love you. We support you. So if you didn't love him enough already, there's even more reason to love this dude. In our entire company, period. So long path to where I'm headed next. There's a coaching program and process called MBIT. It's multiple brain integration techniques. And I became certified in it back in 2013 as an MBIT coach, so I could use this with my coaching clients. And what it is all these things that we've always said that, oh, my heart's telling me this and my gut is telling me this. Well, it's actually true. They've proven it now with, you know, MRIs and neuroscience.
Yeah, really?
You have 200 million neurons firing in the lining of your gut right now. That's the size of a dog's brain. You have a dog's brain in your gut.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That's amazing, man.
And the heart it's hundreds of thousands. I don't remember how many, but it's even smaller. But what they're seeing on these MRIs is if we ignite certain thought processes within you, it actually originates in your gut or your heart first and then goes to the head. And so things like your sense of activation. So if you have someone in an MRI and they're like, think of something that you're super motivated about, that actually fires first down here. And then it goes to the head. And the head says, okay, let's move now. So the head's still like this central operating system, but compassion, oh yeah, you feel these things, right? Like you
Sure.
guys have had your heart broken.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you feel that?
Absolutely.
You feel it deep in here. It hurts. It's painful. That's not the head telling the heart, hey, you should have some pain right now because you got your heart broken. It's because this is the central operating system for your sense of compassion and love and connection. And so this coaching practice helps to integrate those things. It gets people to recognize that the head isn't the all-powerful, that when we're more integrated and we understand that, you know, our sense of intuition or our sense of activation or even our sense of caution comes from down here. So we need to check in here when we need that type of information, or we need to check in here when we need to connect with our compassionate portion of us, or okay, I need to get creative. Like that actually is a head-brained operation. But when all of this stuff actually works together, that's when we're kicking major ass, right? So I've been doing this as a coach for a while, and I really started to kind of put out into just kind of like the ether, the universe, whatever you want to call it, just this kind of thought. I'm ready for something really big. I'm ready for something super awesome to come my way. And so just about a week and a half ago, I got a message back from the person that runs this coaching group. It's really big in New Zealand and Australia. They're based in New Zealand, and they've got pockets in like Europe where they're pretty well represented. But the United States, they don't really have many coaches here, and they don't really have many people to train coaches here. She's like, we would like to invite you to New Zealand to come become a certified trainer.
That's badass.
Yeah, so I'm going to New Zealand in November to go become a certified trainer, so I can be one of the people here in the United States to actually certify other coaches.
That is
Wow.
awesome.
That is,
man.
yeah.
Yeah.
How long do you get to spend in New Zealand?
I'll be there for 11 days total. It's a 6-day training, and it going out there, it takes kind of 2.5 days to get there because you're losing a day and
Right.
a half, pretty much. You know what's really funny? On the flight back, I leave New Zealand on November 11th at 7:25 a.m., and I land in Los Angeles at 6:25 a.m. on November 11th. Closest thing I'll ever experience to time travel, I guess.
That's pretty cool, man.
But yeah, I'm super excited for this. I see huge potential also for like this industry. Think about how connected we are to that stuff in this industry. The people that were in the room last night, watching what was happening up on this stage over here, those are the kind of people that would be so connected to something like this. And so I see a huge opportunity bringing this back to the hair industry. But I also see it on a bigger scale too, and so many other industries. And I have a huge passion for coaching in general with people. So
Would you be willing to come back on the podcast and talk about that?
oh yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. We'll just definitely. You're right in my head because I was
Yeah.
thinking the same thing. I was actually going to wait until after the podcast and talk to him about it, but I think it's great.
No, I figured we commit them on live air. No, I'm joking.
Smart guy
You
over
got
here.
this. Yeah. He's like, would you like to commit to September 12th at 2:35 p.m.?
On record.
That's awesome. Andrew, man.
Oh, that's so exciting. I can't. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
I'm excited for you.
me too, man.
Be
It
stoked for
feels like, coming off of a little bit of a rough streak, when things really start to take off for you and you start to feel that like fullness come back in and the heart open up and just like that excitement. It's proof that we have to have the dark with the light, to me, because had this opportunity came 3 years ago when I was still kind of like, yeah, everything's cool, life is
Right.
great, everything's perfect, I might not have appreciated it, honestly.
Right.
But the fact that I had a year last year where I had to kind of recalculate, like, okay, what am I doing here? I've got to think about things differently. I think coming out of that, I don't want to call it a dark period, but a period of hard times, then I feel like this moment feels so epic. Like it feels so huge to me. And even honestly, like that panel that I did last night, I just, I went to bed with the biggest smile on my face because that's the
rad.
kind of stuff that just lights me up.
Look,
Like,
most of the people listening to this did not see that panel. How can people go listen to watch that panel that you did last night?
Thank you. I love that you brought that up because they can go to Salon Centric. You click on the Learn tab on the Salon Centric website, and then it's their Pro Beauty Central is where they post a ton of, it's just a great resource anyway because there's tons of free education there, but they can watch the panel from last night on Pro Beauty Central.
Because everybody here at the show today has been talking about that panel
Yeah,
that
no
were
doubt.
there.
No doubt. What so when you go to the Learn thing, is it set up by date or how would they know to find that one? Like if we release this in a month or so, do you know?
I'm sorry, I actually don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So but it's Premier Philly is where we are. So I'm sure it'll be linked into there. And it was the Salon Centric.
It takes a Pro
It takes
VIP panel.
There you go.
I'm
Boom.
sure. I know for sure that there's a search tab on the Pro Beauty Central thing. I think if you put in Salon Centric, it takes a Pro VIP panel, Philadelphia or something like that. I think you'll find it pretty easy.
So how can our listeners keep up with you?
Well, so from an educational standpoint, if you want to see hair education that I'm a part of, that pretty much all gets put out through Sam VA Hair. So you can find Sam VA Hair, of course, on Instagram, Facebook, our YouTube channel. We publish at least one new piece of education to our YouTube channel, which is, again, just Sam VA Hair. We publish one new piece every single week. So tons and tons of free educational content. And yeah, so my hairdressing life, I feel like appears more through Sam Via Hair Instagram than even my own. Because I tend to try and keep my personal Instagram more about who I am as a person, and so you'll see hair stuff come up because of course that's part of who I am as a person, but most of the educational stuff will come up on Sam Via. But if you want to connect with me personally, that's just andrew.carruthers on Instagram. I have a Facebook page, but honestly, I don't pay very close attention to it. So
I have a Facebook page, but I haven't been on it since 2014.
Right. Yeah. And so right now, the best place to find me is on Instagram.
Amazing. Mr. Andrew Carruthers, you're amazing. Thank you so much for making time for us. And,
Thanks, dude.
And hopefully this is a good break for you in the middle of your busy day on the floor.
I love this kind of stuff. I could just sit around in a coffee table and talk with people about cool stuff all day. That's just what I enjoy. So I can't thank you guys enough again for inviting me on. I'm super honored. Like I never take this stuff for granted. You know, it definitely just means a lot to me that you would want to have me here and hear my thoughts. So I appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
That blows me away because I'm thinking, like, how do we not want this dude sitting at our table?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's so crazy. Such a weird thought. Mr. Andrew Carruthers, thank you very, very much for joining us on your day.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, so there it is. Hey, this is a message that we've been trying to bring, I don't know, for the last couple months, actually since we started the podcast. Hey, so if you like the podcast or if you find that it's useful, please leave us a review, a 5-star review on iTunes. Leave us a rating and a review.
But if you don't like it, forget about it.
Yeah, totally forget about this message. We also want to thank Sarah and Blaine from Pretty Gritty. Sarah and Blaine, they are a band out of Portland, Oregon, and we just want to thank them very much for allowing us to use their song, Pleased to Meet You, on our podcast. That's cool. I think you can find, actually you can find their music on iTunes.
Peace and hair grease.